Well, hello everyone, and today we're going to be painting our first lesson of the series on luscious landscapes. And in this class, we're going to be working on the sunflower field. So what I normally like to do when I start a landscape is first of all, I'm working on a square. And this is one of the Da Vinci Pro panels. So what they are is, I've got one of the wrappers here. It's a gesso board kind of mounted to a wood canvas. So they're really smooth, and I really like the way the acrylic kind of glides along the surface of these. So that's what I'll be using today, and I've taped the edges to keep the paint from getting on the side, and I'm just using like a blue painter's tape, so it peels off really nicely. So before I get started, what I like to do is I'll do a little thumbnail sketch of taking a look at my landscape reference and just try to give myself a simplified version of what I see. And I want to look for patterns of light and patterns of dark. And I want to figure out my basic composition before I start painting. I want to kind of look at the landscape and see what is it that I want to bring out of this, because there's a lot going on, and I like to try to simplify it down. So I've drawn out a little pencil sketch, and I've got a little Sharpie pen here. I just like to kind of sketch out the basic idea. I'm looking at the big picture. What's the composition going to be like? So what will guide that is where are the darks and lights, and what are the where are your brights going to be. And I'm looking at the sunflowers, and so that's going to be sort of my brightest color. I really like working with landscapes that have flowers and color. Even if the landscape doesn't have a lot of color, I like to add color. What you have to decide is, when you're starting a landscape painting, kind of everyone has something, their perspective, something that they like. So you may be attracted to the beauty of sunlight. You may like, big mountains. Some people pick a scene because it's peaceful. I am attracted to color, and I like to bring out kind of decorative patterns in what I paint. I like to create colorful, happy, lively paintings. And that may not be someone else's perspective. They might want to be creating something totally different than me, but that's what I like to do. And so I'm going to be wanting to look at bringing out all the color in the sunflowers, and how does the color interact with all the green. In my reference photo, it's very green, orange. It's a very overcast day. So the way I look at it is, I'm going to use what I see here just for the idea and the big picture, but we're going to go ahead and make it the way I will paint it is to create a more happy, sunshiny field. So you want to consider your point of view and the reason for painting a particular scene, before you start painting, just because there are so many different ways you could go when you're deciding you know, what's my main goal in painting this landscape, you know? So that's what I do anyways. And I will take pretty much any reference photo, and I'll probably, my spin will be, you know, more of a cheerful painting at the end of the day. So that's kind of what I'm looking at when I'm starting my painting is, you know, I'm going to be looking at that. So I'm going to start off with getting some water and some dioxazine violet. And I want to get in something right away that I'm going to be able to have as a contrast to the sunflowers. And also, maybe I'll use a smaller brush, draw in some of, actually I'm going to start with some red oxide to draw in some of the main parts. So I'm looking at my, you know, once you draw your thumbnail sketch, you can use it to kind of be a guideline for where, you know, where you're going to place things. So I simplified a lot of the trees, and I'm just going to, you know, sketch in my little thumbnail sketch. And I like a simpler landscape with less, you know, less details. Anyways, you can always cut in some of the sky later into whatever you've got there. If it's too big or too much detail, you can always cut in some sky and cut out some of that if it's too much. But I think this transparent red oxide is it's a good color to sketch in what I'm initially doing here. And it's a nice warm color for an underpainting. So I'm just going to kind of mark off where the sunflowers are. I want to get those bright colors in so that later they don't get, you know, too muddy. And I'm just looking at the big picture. I'm not going to get into any details. I'm just kind of, I'm looking at it as a, you know, as a pattern. And where my big picture is. And this is just a, you know, Filbert Creative Mark. It's a really inexpensive brush that came in a little set that I had originally put on the list, but it's just like one of those little cheapy brush sets. So right now we're just blocking in. Maybe I'll have one sunflower right in the foreground here. And make sure I'm happy with where all the sunflowers are going to go. Use a bit of Indian yellow there. Okay. Now I'm going to go back to what I was initially doing. I wanted to get the lighter, you know, the sunflowers in first, and I want to get some of this just dioxazine violet in there in the underpainting. Let me get a little bit darker. I want to get some of this in there because when I'm thinking color, and you know, I'm thinking right now just blocking in the big picture. I'm getting in my values, but my dark value, you know, doesn't have to go to a, you know, right away to a, you know, plain old dark green or dark brown. I'm going to throw in this color just to begin getting that as my darker value, just because it also really complements the sunflowers, you know, the yellow, orange, and the green actually too. So wherever I have something that's a darker value, I'm going to put a little bit of that purple in. And get that horizon in there. And create some variety in my painting this way. Even get a little bit of blue back in here. Just drawing some of those rows. This is just some cobalt blue. Just getting some, you know, blue in there because I know as the things get farther away, they tend to get more in the blue tone, and closer, you know, more, you know, reds. And so I'm just going to put a few notes in there. Get some blue in there. I wanna kind of just really look at my sunflower shapes and really kind of go back in and really pick out a few that I want to see. Looking at my reference photo, you know, I want to look at some of these close-up sunflowers and make sure I have just a few in the very front there that are going to have a little more detail than the others. So what I'm trying to do is really just get in the main subject is sort of, and composition in the beginning is really you're looking at your dark and your light values and what shapes do those create, like what patterns do they create in your painting. So I'm trying to make sure I like the overall shapes of where, you know, you have your bright and then where you have your dark. And the sky, if the main part of the composition is the flowers and the landscape of the field, the sky is kind of secondary. However, so I kind of want to I'll save the sky to more the end of my painting, so that I can decide how, you know, how bright I need it to be to contrast with my with the sunflower field. So, but I will maybe get a little something a little orange in the background, because it will, you know, so I'm going to mix some orange and some Indian yellow and a little bit of white, because white also sets it back and makes it cooler and, you know, further away. So I might just lay some of this in, because later I'm gonna, you know, I'll let some of that show through when I get, you know, when I get my sky in there. So I'll add a little orange and white, which is quite a, you know, cool color. And I got some yellow and white, Indian yellow and white and some orange, you know, and I'm gonna put some of that in there, because later it'll look pretty when it shows through. It's just more of what I like to do, you know, the interplay of color and design. Basically, you're building a design when you're painting a landscape. And my paintings are really, I feel like, about a kind of more of a happy feeling, and you know, it's more of a feeling than it is an exact, you know, representation of exactly what's in the photo. It's more of a kind of a whimsical style, where it kind of frees me up to really enjoy playing with the colors and liven it up a little. So I'm not worried about how accurate everything is. I'm more interested in a kind of more of a decorative and colorful painting at the end of the day. And so I'm kind of looking ahead to, when I thought of this painting, I thought the sunflowers have a lot of yellow. If it was just, you know, the sunflowers and all that greenery that's in this reference photo, it, to me, just you have so much you can do to play with that. So if you think about complementary colors, I started to think, instead of dark green, why not, you know, play with some purple, you know, in there and liven things up. And I might even throw just a little bit in the underpainting, some of that, you know, quinacridone red, you know, here and there, just to really make that painting, because you're gonna still put the green in there, but this foreground is very warm. And this is the sky, the notes that'll come through in the sky are very cool. So you're setting also creating depth in your painting just with color. Okay, so then the next thing I want to do is maybe start, I want to just add in some, look at the shapes here that we see, the color shapes, and then there's some shapes of the green that work its way back, and maybe mark some of those off so that I can really, you know, track where that's going to go. So I'm going to mix up a sap green and some cad yellow light. And remember, when you're using acrylic, to give your paint a spritz. I'm using a Masterson's Stay Wet palette because it's so dry here in Arizona. What it is it's like a paper that, you know, has a sponge underneath. Right here is the yellow sponge. It has a lot of paint stains, but it keeps the, you know, the paper draws in water up into the paint, so that can really help basically, you know, keep your paints from drying out so fast. And I like this, you know, this butcher, whatever they call it, butcher palette for mixing up, you know, bigger amounts of color. Okay, so I'm just gonna go in and I'm gonna kind of work in some of that green that I see. And the reference photo is very gray. Everything is, you know, got that overcast feel to it. So I'm not going to worry about that because I'm going to create something cheery. So I've added sap green and cad yellow light, and I'm just working in, I'm looking at my photo and I'm just kind of creating some of the boundaries of where I see the green, just to break up the yellow shape. If I'm looking at it as shapes, I've got a multitude of sunflowers here that basically you could look at as one whole shape. And then I'm just kind of looking at these larger green pieces and I'm just putting some of those in. You want to really you want to try to keep those shapes simple. I'm going to add a little cobalt to that sap green and cad yellow light mix. You want to be careful that you don't overcomplicate, you know, you can get, you know, you want to keep your composition strong, so you do, you know, just try to do it simple. You have to get every single green between every sunflower. You want to simplify. So look at the big picture when you're painting landscape, and really simplify what you see. And it's hard because there's thousands of these sunflowers, so you kind of just, you can easily get distracted by them. So I'm trying not to get overly detailed. I'm just blocking in some of that green. there's a large amount of green here, but I want to definitely let that purple through, so I'm just going to use maybe a little bit of darker sap, and just marking off some of the greens. And letting that, for now, letting that purple really shine through. And keeping this area quite warm. And I can go ahead and put a little of that sap green and some cobalt, and I'm gonna go ahead and put some, just a little bit of light on the edges of this, of those trees. And then I'm going to get some sap green and maybe some transparent brown oxide. I'm just getting a little bit of a maybe some ultramarine blue and sap, and I'm going to just get in some of the shadow in the trees there. And get some sap green. I had put something to darken it, like some ultramarine blue works really well to sort of darken it. And I'm still letting some of that purple, you know, show through. And I'll put a few of those sunflowers. This is some transparent brown oxide, and I'm just getting in some of the centers of some of them, because although I don't want a lot of detail, I'm going to get some of those centers in. Help guide my composition some more. Just get in some more detail. And each step of the way, it's like a building block, you know. You're building upon one thing after another. And in the early stages, it can seem kind of daunting, because you have so many different things to pay attention to. But we slowly are getting, a good pattern here. I'm looking at the overall pattern, and I'm happy with the composition. What I'm going to do is start to add some mid-tones of these in the foreground, some of the mid-tone values to those leaves. Especially with acrylic, the paint can dry so much darker, so I'm going to get some white and sap green and some of that cad yellow light, and I'll just put in a few sunflowery shapes, those leaves, just a few for fun in the very front there. And creates a lot of the layers create a lot of, you know, texture and a lot of value, variety. I'm going to add a little coat, you know, a little bit more of a bluey green, just to captures more of, like, there's the bright leaves catching the sun, and then there's some that are in the more in the shade, so I'll add a little more blue to those so you can see the difference between the warmer green, and then you have some of the cooler greens. I'm just gonna, I'll add some different lines in there, and warm and cool, you know, warm and cool, more like, you know, just kind of random brush strokes. You don't want to get too detailed because it's a landscape, and it's not my style to go too, you know, too detailed on, you know, I don't want to get it looking too tight. I want it to stay loose. And I'm looking at my reference photo and I see just basically I'm looking at, you know, light values and dark values of green. And so I'm just going to kind of put in these brush strokes just to create that texture I see in those sunflower field leaves. But I don't want to go overboard, and I'm, you know, starting to see the nice interplay of the purples and the greens that I like, and some of that magenta coming through. So I'm really happy with all that. That's why I'm really glad to get that underpainting in there. So now I've kind of got, you know, I've got those, all those kind of mid and dark tone values. I'm just going to add a few of those lighter, just a few real bright ones, just to bring it up a notch. And I see the, you know, between rows the greens get darker, And you know, then you see these brighter shapes. And what I'm looking at is, you know, I'm seeing there's these lighter, cooler greens, and there's like these darks. I'm just kind of working some of those in there. And I like to add variety, so I'll go in and add a little cad yellow light to some. And I'll work some of those in. And if it's too light later on, we can always go in and, you know, add a little glaze. You can glaze over with some ultramarine blue or something that'll, you know, set it back into the canvas. Go add a little more cobalt as you go further away, just to set it back. As you go further away, things look, you know, more blue, a little more gray, a little flatter. Then up close, everything's going to be more vivid. Okay, well, I'm just continuing to look at my overall picture and work in some of those greens. I'm going to go back and make sure I get more in this area here. Sometimes I'll even take something really cool like that cobalt, that teal color, and I'll, like, you know, add a few real cool leaf colors there. Really like that. Just has such a nice feel with the purples and the greens. And I'll take some of that real, you know, some of that turquoise, and I'll do some, you know, vertical, you know, sunflowery type vertical stems in there. Starting to create that feeling that I'm looking at in the picture. Add a little white to that, and we'll get some of that up here. You know, way off in the distance, some that light turquoise in there. So now I'm going to start, and I've been building up a lot of the green, and I'll go back later and adjust it, but I need to start getting some of the details of my sunflowers in there. So, you know, I'm going to work on some of that. So I've got this little silver white 8 brush that I use. It's from the Silver brand, and they're designed for acrylic. And I'm gonna start working on some of these sunflowers here. So I'll get a little Indian yellow, some of that cad yellow light, maybe get something warm, mix in some transparent red oxide into that cad yellow light, and I'm just gonna, you know, work in some of that brighter yellow. Maybe add a little transparent brown oxide just to work in more of a shadow. Color. Maybe a bit of orange to warm it up a little. So I got some mix of the cad yellow light and some orange and some of that transparent brown oxide. And I'm just gonna make some just block in those sunflower shapes. I kind of want to warm it up a little still. So I'm going to add a little more orange, a little more transparent red oxide to, warm up that. Start off with a warmer base that I can later go in and add my yellow highlights to. I like to start off more on a dark with the flower and then add the lighter highlights later. So as we get further away, we want to have less detail. You want to really simplify when you're painting landscapes. It's a real looking at the big picture, but really simplifying everything down. I don't want to get tangled up in the details. That's my weakness, is I get distracted. I want to start working on every petal of the sunflowers, but I know that's not a good plan. I need to block in the big picture still. And keep blocking in. And keep blocking in. So as I go further up, again, I'm gonna be looking at how do I, when I'm looking at a landscape and I'm thinking as things go off into the distance, they get cooler and bluer, and so we can make our yellows cooler by adding white to them. So I'm gonna work on a little bit more on the foreground, and then we're gonna start to cool off our yellows, our sunflowers, as we go further away. So I'm going to get some of this cad yellow light, and I'm going to just mix a little orange into it. And I'll put just a little bit of detail on these ones in the foreground. If later on it's too much, we can do a wash or something and just kind of take out some of the details. But I think these ones will have some detail. It's just more fun that way. I really, when I choose landscapes that I want to paint, I choose ones, tend to choose them with flowers because I really love having colorful landscapes, so, and painting colorful landscapes. So if I don't have a landscape with flowers, it's usually colorful leaves or something with lots of color still. Or then I move towards doing snowy landscapes because I love playing around with colors in the snow. Purples and blues and, you know, really, again, just playing around with color and enjoying that whole process of painting colorful paintings is what I like to do. So some landscape painters, they tend to go with more natural colors, what they see in nature, and those are also beautiful, but this is, you know, the way I'd like to paint is very you know, colorful and loose, and not worry too much about the natural color. It's more of a challenge for me to make things colorful and still, you know, do justice to the natural landscape. So as I go further away, you know, I'll have to do a little less detail. So these ones in the foreground were probably my most detailed. I'm just continuing to build up the shapes. I'm using a combination of the cad yellow light and the transparent red oxide and red oxide, cad yellow light, and, you know, a little bit of, maybe a little tiny bit of white in there. So as I go further away, I'm gonna cut out putting in the details of the centers, and kind of more or less I'm going to move to less and less detail as I go back. And more or less creating more of the kind of a movement that I see looking at the sea of sunflowers, kind of just more of a creating that kind of vibration of, there's, you know, a lot of different shapes, and you know they're flowers, but you're just kind of, you're more or less just showing that they're flowers without any of the details, just more by the light that you're catching and the kind of the movement. And as I go further away, you know, I'm going to add more white into my mix, and I might even add a little bit of that quinacridone red and kind of create even a little bit of a variety, you know, a kind of a, almost like a peachy color in the distance. kind of what I would expect the lightest light on a sunflower would look like from far away. Something kind of like, you know, basically like orange. If you took orange and just added some white into it, it creates sort of that coral color. And almost a capturing that feeling of all those sunflowers way off in the distance. And when I get working on the ones closer, I'll add a little more color, yellow, and a little more detail again. Creating the sunflowery field effect. You know, really, it's an impression you're giving up close here of the field, sunflower field. And that's some real bright cad yellow light there. Putting some orange just to really liven up those ones in the front. Really, really just zings with light. So now, you know, I could go back into these sunflowers in the very front and work on a little detail in those if I wanted to. Get in some of the center with that transparent brown oxide. Really work it in just to darken some of those centers a little. And also kind of, you know, loosen off some of the edges so that, you know, your eye doesn't go straight. So I'll maybe get some Indian yellow and some of that transparent red oxide and just kind of, you know, soften off some of the edges there. Just so it's, you know, you want it to be, you want to be looking at them, but you don't want your eye to be drawn right too, you know, tight. You don't want them too tightly wound so that your eyes go right in. So I'll darken some of the area around just to give that shadow effect, but I don't want it to be, I'm just kind of softening it up a little. Especially the, you know, the ones that are a little further away. Try to lighten up the centers a little. And at this point, you know, your reference photo, if you look, I tend to say I use my reference photo, you know, early on, but then after you kind of want to just, you're going to put what you want to see into your painting. So at this stage of the game, I'm kind of going more on now, you know, the colors, and I've got my composition, and I'm more or less kind of gonna gauge what I'm doing based on, you know, the colors I see and what do I need to add to my painting. Not so much worrying about, I'm not going to worry about all the details in my photo reference, because otherwise you can get drawn in to putting too much detail, you know, into your painting. At this stage, you know, I've got my main composition and I've got the overall idea really kind of well founded, and the reference photo has really served its purpose for me. Now I can just look at my painting kind of more practically and say, okay, where do I need to, how can I make it a stronger, you know, composition with what I got? So looking at the shapes and the colors, you know, that I've been putting down, how can I kind of, you know, maybe combine some of the darks, or you know, conglomerate some of these lighter parts so that it just feels more tied together overall. So I'm going to look at that, and what I'm going to do is kind of as these crop, whatever they're, these lines where, you know, these different rows are, I've got these ones here, but as they go further and further away here, you don't see them as much. And so we can kind of now go and ask ourselves, do we really, you know, need that detail over there, and, you know, soften up some of these lines that were at first kind of there to help give you your eye some structure and order. Maybe I don't, you know, need so much those to be strong, because as you work your way across the field, you see more of them here and less of them here. So I can kind of eliminate some of that, just so it just creates a more flowy, you know, flows together better. And I can now that I've got a base for that, I have something I can kind of work with. Whereas when I was just starting out, I kind of needed to, you know, have some guidelines, but now I can kind of eliminate some of those, because, you know, I want to have less detail and simplify my composition some more. So I'm just kind of, you know, gonna leave some of those field markings, but I'm not gonna have them there as, you know, as boldly as they were before. So I'm just gonna take a look, and I take a minute and step back, or not, well, I'm not stepping back, but I'm taking a minute to kind of look at, you know, where it's going, and gauging the overall composition. The details less and less over in this area, and then as you work closer to where your eye is lining up with the field more, your perspective lines are lining up, you get a little more, you could infer a little more shape in the sunflowers. And as I go, the paint dries and, you know, it can get a little bit darker, so I'll go and want to adjust some of that lightness here that I see. Especially I like to draw your eye up through more the middle of the canvas. You know, I'm not so worried about the details over there as much. It's just a optical, you're creating sort of an optical illusion of these sunflowers going off into the distance. And then I'll go to these ones that are closer. And give them a little more of that Indian yellow. A little bit brighter, more lively yellow. Same with the field, I'll maybe put a little of that orange into the white and, you know, give it a little variety. But it's really just, I'm just kind of dabbing in. Along the tree line, you know, loosen up that edge a little. So that's looking good. Now, I'm gonna just take a look at my field, and I think what I'll do is I've got all these warm purples in the underpainting. I'm gonna go and just add a little of that dioxazine violet and a little bit of cobalt and some white. And so cobalt, dioxazine violet, and a little white. And I'm gonna just kind of, because I've got the warm purples in the foreground, I'm gonna go and, you can see purples all around up there, but just to really, again, I want to play with that color in the where the greens are. I'm gonna go and pop a little bit of that purple with the white. Because it's also going from this dark purple to the light whiter mix of purple, which also gives an impression of, you know, things going off into the distance. Also, it's a fun play with the, you know, color, which is what I like to do in my landscapes, is play around with that color. So I might just go and add a little more of that quin red into that yellow and white mix, and just kind of add a little, some of that, you know, peachy red color into the distance along, you know, the edges, just to give it a little shape. And I take a little of that cad red, and I'll work some of that into some of centers of these sunflowers up close. Really brings them forward a lot. And take a little of that red and, you know, put some in the very back with a little white. Just kind of warms it up a little. And then I'll take, you know, some of that dioxazine violet and some white, and just do the odd, you know, up close little dash of purple in the foreground, and put a little between those flowers here and there. That really makes them come alive. So I'm looking now at, I've got an impression of shadows, and I've got some lights. I've got a lot of warm shadows going through here. Now I think what I'll do is I'm gonna put in some of that sky. So I'm gonna get some fresh glue out, because my glue has had a little bit of that green in it. So you want to get some, fresh paint out so that you have a pure, blue. I've got cobalt blue and white here on my mixing tray. I got out some fresh paint for that so that you have a real nice, clean, pure mix of blue and white. And I'm just gonna, I want to go ahead, and I don't really plan clouds very much. I would rather just do them spontaneously. So I want to mix up a good pile of this cobalt blue and white, and I've got a nice pile of that, and then I'll take a little more cobalt and white and mix a little bit of a darker, a little bit of a darker value, bluer, a little bit of a bluer sky value, just to have a little bit of variety to go. So then I'm going to take my brush, and I'll use a larger brush. This is let's see, a 3/4 inch brush, and I'm gonna just start with, I'll use some of that darker blue, and I'm gonna even, I can add some of, I've got some of this liquid gloss medium to add to it so that it kind of goes on nice. And I'm just gonna put some of that on. And put it on with a little bit of a variety stroke, because as I remember, I want to leave some, I want to show some of that, bright orange in some areas, because I just think it looks interesting and it ties in with the rest of the painting. And I'm going to use some of that lighter mix and just work in some of that. Just to add variety. And bit of more cobalt blue into the mix. Now with acrylic, I'm using quite a lot of thick paint here, and I'm trying to work pretty fast because I know the paint will dry really quick and I don't have a lot of time to work with it. Now I want to leave some of those beautiful bright colors around that tree, so I'm being careful not to paint over all those underneath brush strokes. So I'm just kind of going along and getting this in, and then I'll get some white while my paint is still pretty wet, and I'm gonna just kind of play around with some cloud-like shapes. In there. Just get some white in there and scoop it up on your brush, and I'm kind of brushing more on that sort of up and down to give a different feeling from the plane of the landscape, which is more going this way. I'm kind of working the clouds a little differently. And I might even take a little bit of that yellow and just put a little bit, get some of that, maybe a little bit of that Indian yellow, and just dab a little yellow into the sky there, just to kind of tie it in with the rest of the landscape, and it gives it a kind of a more of a sunny feel. So now we've got sky in, now we can kind of gauge the rest of the painting a bit better. So I'm going to go and put a little work on adding a little light to the trees, and I'm just going to go ahead and put in maybe a little too light, so you can dab that off a little. I'll stick to a little bit of there. We want it just kind of stay off in the distance still. So I'm just trying not to make much detail. I want to keep those off in the distance. So want to look at, you know, I've got more of a sunny sky day. I want to go in and do a little bit of detail still with the sky. So I'll take my little brush here and get some of that white and cobalt, and I'll just kind of cut in a little bit here and there into the trees. And take off some of that bulk on that one because it was competing too much with this main tree here. I might even just kind of take that one down a little more even. There. So just take a little bit more white and just get a little bit more detail in the clouds. So now what I see is I want to add just a little more shape in my sunflowers in the distance. So I'm just going to kind of cut in a little of that sap green and, you know, cad yellow light, and just work in a little more kind of shape in the fields. Just a few more details here and there. And it also helps to break up some of the yellows. And the further I go away, I'm just adding a little more cobalt blue to that mix. Going to go in and add a few more light green in the foreground here. And this green is, you know, sap with the cad yellow light, and it's quite a lot warmer than the greens that, you know, you see off in the distance there. And I'm going to add these same kind of warm, just a few of those warm greens in there. And just kind of go in and add a few darkest darks back in here just to really draw your eye in and balance the composition a bit more. And, just work the odd little dash of dark in there just to draw your eye all the way back into your painting again. And that's just a mix of, green, sap green, and it's got ultramarine blue, sap, just something to create a real dark, warm color. And as I go along, I'm, gonna just put in a few, cut in a bit into the field, just to, it just creates a little break in the line and also combines the field and the horizon line nicely. And just put a few little darks in there. Just draws your eye back there again. So now we have a very colorful and vibrant scene, which I like. And some things I'll play around with at the very end. I'll take red and I'll put a little bit of red in my in here and there, just to draw your eye, into the composition. I really like to, add a little dash here and there, just to, ties in with some of these kind of reddy highlights here, and it just kind of draws your eye into the composition more. And I might just get a little cobalt blue and some of that, liquid medium, and just kind of glaze in a little bit of a warm blue along the top of my canvas to really, get that warmth in the sunshiny sky back in there. So that's just a glaze of cobalt and some of that liquid glazing fluid, just that medium, and that'll help kind of, spread that. Just warms up the sky and gives it some more depth. And I think I'll just take some yellow and some white, and maybe a little bit of that Indian yellow, and I'm just going to really get some off in the distant light with that. Those sunflowers way off in the distance, catching the sunlight. as the paint acrylic dries, it can sometimes darken, so you kind of, yeah, sometimes have to go back and, you know, adjust your paint color again. Just kind of draws your eye through the lights. You know, we worked at drawing your eye through some of the darks, but just kind of pop a few real light yellows, and then maybe just a few lighter orangey colors, just to, you know, carry that through. So you're really, you know, from the beginning to the end, you're really building upon your main, you know, your main plan, your basic plan, you know, the big picture, and then at the end is, you know, you're building on some of the details, you know. And but if you have your general idea of what you want to do, then you can kind of just, you know, it's like building blocks, and then when you get your values in, you know, you can play with the color. Like I used the purple instead of all green, and I went and put in, you know, I started with warmer colors in the foreground and then cooler in the back, and then I added the sky in at the end. So and you can kind of add some more details here and there with the greens too. But I think that really draws your eye in when you have all these colors, and it's just more fun. So I think that's probably about all I can do here. You know, I might go back in and add a few details here and there. With the sunflowers, I could, you know, just go and add a little bit more color to these ones. But I think that's about it. You know, that's all for now, but if I was gonna do one thing, I'd probably come back tomorrow and look at it again, and then I would have fresh eyes, and I could probably, you know, finish it up some more. But I think that's the gist of it, and I hope that this video helps you, and I look forward to seeing your paintings, and thanks for watching.